So our dream team today that's joining me on stage. First up, Terry Brock. Terry is a certified speaking professional. Uh, he's gotten the designation from the NSA. He's also an inductee into the Speaker Hall of Fame. And honest to God, if I could sum up Terry in the fewest possible words, it would be authentic and just incredibly engaging. Terry, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Next up, Mary Kelly. Mary holds a Council of Peers Award for Excellence. She is also a member of the Speaker Hall of Fame, a certified speaking professional, and a certified virtual presenter. She's also a graduate of the United States Naval Academy and retired from the Navy as a commander after 20 years of active duty in intelligence and logistics. And she also holds a PhD in economics. Mary, I am humbled. Thank you for joining us. And finally, Stephen Shapiro. Stephen is the author of 5 books. He's got a book that just came out recently he'll talk a bit more about. His speaking has taken him to over 50 countries, and no doubt he's a familiar face to many of you because he served a 6-year term on the board of directors of the NSA. He's also the recipient of the Certified Speaking Professional designation, and in 2015, he too was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. Stephen, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here, thanks.
So if we can, let's begin with you, Terry. I had an occasion in 1994 that sort of turned the tide for me. I was in Vegas, and it was Comdex. Remember Comdex way back when?
Oh, yeah, I've attended it many times.
Right.
Wonderful.
I was giving one of my inaugural keynotes that kind of launched my speaking career. It was in front of 3,000 people. I was terrified. I had a full-blown panic attack, but it wasn't because of the 3,000 people. My mom and dad were in the room. And at the end of that session, despite all the nerves, I nailed it. I felt so good. And I said to myself, you know what, there's something here. I should pursue this. What was that moment for you? Did you have that seminal moment when you finally said to yourself, you know what, this makes sense. I can create some value here?
Wow. Well, I guess it would be probably more than one moment. As a kid growing up speaking, I did my first speech in 3rd grade when I stood up in front of the church and read the Christmas play, and did that. That was something I kind of liked that. And then I did more throughout school. But for me as a professional, I knew when one of our past presidents of NSA, Al Walker, was giving a presentation and talking about speaking. And I just knew this is what I want to do. I want to communicate and help others, sharing ideas that I have and be able to make their lives better. So I guess probably multiple times, but that one time with Al Walker really helped me more than ever.
The notion of communication, we were talking about this before we started the session today, is such an important part of what we do as speaking professionals. Being able to share ideas and opinions with people and have that change the way people look at the world is so critically important, I think, especially in a world as complex as today's is. Mary, you've had an illustrious career. You've done so much. Tell me about your shift to professional speaking. What got you started?
Well, I've actually been a professor for over 30 years, as well as being a naval officer. And in my time as a naval officer, I was also teaching and training, and that's just part of your job. But my critical moment happened when I was a professor back at the Naval Academy, where I started out, and that's where I ended my career in the Navy. And our new admiral coming in did not like to go talk to groups of people. Well, it's kind of expected at that level. So people would call up and go, hey, can we get the admiral to come talk to, the Marriott or the FBI or the Boy Scout Jamboree? And because he did not enjoy public speaking, they said, no, but you can have Commander Kelly. They're like, but we don't want Commander Kelly. We want the admiral. Everybody wants the admiral. And they're like, yeah, he's not available. He's home watching TV with his spouse. You get Commander Kelly. And I didn't think too hard about it. I would, redo my hair, slap on some lipstick. I'm in the little uniform, little ribbons, little hat, all that. And I would go talk about leadership and didn't think too hard about it. And I was at one of those programs, and another NSA member there, his name was John Alston, and some of you know who he is. We lost him a few years ago. He was there and he said, you're pretty good at this. You might want to think about a career in professional speaking. And he said, you need to join the NSA, to which I naively said, but I've already worked for the NSA. And he goes, no, we're the other NSA. And that's how I started.
That's awesome. So I think we've all had that person who kind of pulled us aside and said, hey, you know what, there's something going on here. Are you aware of how effective you are? And I personally, I had no idea how effective I was on stage. Like you, I just took it for granted. I liked doing it. It was easy to do, but for the most part. But those people are really important. They sort of act as mentors to us that launch us. Right.
And I also think there's a responsibility that we have as professional speakers is to look for those people and to go, you know what, I don't know if you know this, but you've got this. And there's this organization that can help you, and there's people who can help you. And if I can just nudge you in the right direction, this is something you might want to consider. And we need to be looking for that next wave of talent.
That is so well said. I teach as well at Boston University, and I've had kids who have come into my class and they've got incredible presence. They have the ability to connect and communicate, and they don't know it. And I have to pull them aside and tell them that they've got that. And they're always kind of shocked. They're very humble souls usually. They're not the arrogant kind of person that you might expect to want to get up on stage. So I think you're absolutely right. Calling those folks out, telling them that they've got a gift and helping them to master it is so critically important. And Stephen, you've seen a lot of that. You've been involved with the NSA for many, many years. Give me a sense for when folks come up to you and say, because of your involvement, hey, I want to be a speaker. What are some of the greatest fallacies that you've encountered that you have to sort of dismiss at the outset?
The biggest fallacy is that the speech is what we're selling. Because we're not selling, for some people, I guess it is, but for the work that I do, I'm really trying to sell an outcome. And so what I'm trying to do is make sure I'm having a conversation with a meeting planner, with an executive, to really make sure that we're clear on what is the result of the speech. And if it ends when I leave the stage, I've probably failed. So I think thinking about the one and done as a speech may be the biggest fallacy, especially now where I think a lot of organizations want more from their speakers.
So what's the more? What do we deliver that provides that added value, Stephen?
It could be a whole variety of things. So one thing which I always do for every one of my paid speeches is I create a custom password protected web portal designed specifically for that event with tools, videos, a bunch of materials, all the slides and videos and other things specific to that event.
Right.
But then I also give them a challenge, and I give them a 5-week challenge. I have these 25 lenses that I use during my speech, and I say, use 5 lenses 5 days a week for 5 minutes, 4 or 5 weeks. And then at the end of that, we're going to have a little competition 6 weeks from now to reflect back, see who had the best solution to a problem. It requires no time on my part, but it adds so much value because now we've added an extra 6 weeks of work that people are doing on a regular basis. And that really just drives a huge amount of impact.
Well, it's the classic takeaway. I think so often we join hands, we sing Kumbaya, and at the end of the day, what do you bring back to the office? What do you bring back to your life, frankly, from that keynote? And the more I can bring back with me, I can take away from it, the more valuable that will be. And doing it in the form of a workshop or doing it in some way that has homework, I think is absolutely a great way to give people a takeaway that's tangible, that they can actually, see some value in beyond the keynote. Great point. So Terry, I'm gonna come back to you for a minute. COVID altered our model so much in the speaking industry. What are some of the things that it did to your model? And more specifically, things that you think will continue beyond lockdown and beyond COVID that will substantially change the nature, the tenor, the business models of the speaking industry?
Yeah, Tom, I have to agree. You are right. It has changed indefinitely where we're going to be. And I think the best part of it, if there could be some good come from COVID, it's that corporate around the world, not just corporate America, they have grown to accept the idea of virtual presentations. It used to be before when I would say, well, I can do this virtually. No. We want you there in person because that's always the best. And I have to say, well, sometimes it is the best. And we love in person. I'm at an in-person meeting right now here in my hotel room, and Mary's just in another room on the other side of the hotel here in Vegas for the National Speakers Association. But there's a place now, and the people around the world, business leaders, have grown to know from experience that, hey, we don't necessarily have to put a salesperson on the plane in New York, fly them to Los Angeles for an hour meeting, and then come all the way back losing 3 days. Instead, we can get results by using video done right. When we do it the right way, then video really can be effective. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tag on to and agree with my friend Stephen when he says the idea, not just a one-time meeting, but it might be that you're with them over a period of time, so that every Monday at 3 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to get together with your group and we're going to train them how to do this. More than just a meeting, there's still a place for that. But I think it's going to be ongoing learning and really implementing results that matter.
Virtual has become an amplifier of sorts, I think, right? To your point, it has taken a message that can be very powerful when delivered in person and given it an application effect, allowed us to increase the reach of that message, to give it more permanence in some ways. Mary, you got a certification in being a virtual presenter. Tell us a bit about that and what you've seen change and what you think some of the long-term trends are going to be as a result of COVID in the speaking industry.
Well, I think for many people, the whole virtual platform does become a more cost beneficial way to deliver information, exactly what Stephen and Terry are saying. And you know this too. So for some people, they say, gosh, we couldn't afford to bring you in live, but can you do a virtual program for us? And our people are everywhere. We also have to remember that remote work and work from home is here to stay too. So more and more people are going to need to be able to do training and get information and have learning opportunities from wherever they are on the planet. And I think that is a critical element as well. So when eSpeakers came out with the certified virtual presenter designation or certification or whatever it is, we all jumped on it because you're trying to show your clients, you know how to do this. You can host the meeting, you know what to do. Most of us have had Zoom since it was offered through NSA since 2013. Zoom was invented in 2011 and it was vastly superior to its competitors. And we've all had the pro account. And that just gives our meeting planners an element of security when they book us, because their biggest fear is, you're not going to do a good job. You're not going to be prepared. You don't know how to use the technology. That took away all of that.
Yeah, what's amazing, Mary, is that COVID took a lot of technologies that were already there in place that we simply didn't have faith in, didn't have the trust factor in, and frankly, didn't think would be as effective as they ended up being, right? I mean, I'm blown away by how well, and thank God for Zoom and platforms like this, because otherwise, what would we have done? And Netflix, by the way, what would we have done for the past 18 months?
Think about telemedicine. Like telemedicine should have been in place 15, 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And especially with this, there's people in rural areas where telemedicine desperately needed to happen so that they could get care. Telemedicine is here to stay. And it's fantastic when you can get somebody. My parents have had all their appointments the past, year, regular appointments by telemedicine. Now they had to have somebody help them out, but that meant I did not have to put my parents into a car and drive them someplace and have them sit in a waiting room. It's a forced acceleration of change. And frankly, a lot of the changes needed to happen.
Yeah, it was about time. I agree with you. It's a forced acceleration. At first, we didn't take to it very kindly. But I think at this point, we're realizing how valuable these new connections can be. Terry, I saw your head nodding quite a bit there as Mary was chatting. Do you want to jump in on this one too?
Yeah, for me, I see that with a client I'm working with right now who's a dentist. And you think how this has affected dentistry. You're literally in someone's mouth. They're doing it, but they've been able to use teledentistry so that they can have the doctor, the dentist, talk with the patient beforehand to say, what does it feel like? What is it? And they might realize, oh, you could do this without having to come into the office. Or, we can see a little bit there. So even teledentistry as well as telemedicine, they should have been here long before. And now, as Mary said, it's been forced acceleration. I think it's a welcome thing.
It is welcome. I was going to switch things up on us a little bit because I want to get into the sort of the guts and the meat of what we're talking about today, which are these behind the stage secrets that we've all learned. Steve, I'm an up and coming fledgling speaker. I've got a passion for it. I haven't done it yet. I want to do it. I'm not sure where to begin. Are there pieces of advice that you would give me to sort of launch my career, to get me started on the right track, on the right trajectory?
I think the first thing is coming back to something I said before, is don't think about the speech, actually think about the outcome. So what is the problem you solve? Because you want to be the aspirin for somebody's pain. And if you can figure out what's the pain that someone has that you can actually solve, and then find out where do those people gather. And then you can craft a speech around that. So what I would do is first figure out who has a need for what I have, and where do they gather, whether it's an association, whether it's a company, whether it's some other type of group. And then I would start trying to share my message with them. And from there, just practice. Give as many speeches as you possibly can, get on as many stages as possible. And I never, even from the beginning, never did a free speech, but I might do an unpaid speech. And to me, the difference is I need to be compensated, but I might be compensated in a different way. I might speak at an event which is 2,000 people, multi-camera, beautiful video. That's compensation. That's something which I couldn't buy. You can't put a price tag on that. So to me, that's the key thing, though, is figure out your problem, who has it, and then go after that and speak, and just create as much great video as you possibly can to help sell it.
And the video, by the way, is really important because ultimately people want to see who you are. They want to see your presence. They want to understand your approach, not just the topic, but in general, how you approach things as a speaker. And the beauty of it is, going back to what we said, not to be too contrived about this, but I think there's a connection. Video has become so much a part of how we consume this sort of content that if you don't have it, you lose that seal of credibility. I mean, it's like not having a website. You know, how can you be a business and not have a website? How can you be a speaker and not have videos? I give that advice to folks all the time. It's amazing how few take it. They're timid about it. Why is that?
Why are they timid about video?
I see that all. I see folks that, they show me videos they want to use, and they're videos of them in a classroom or some kind of a setting with, a handful of people, and they just don't put them in the best possible light. Why don't folks want to invest in doing that at the front end?
I think people need to understand that you could treat speaking as a hobby, or you could treat it as a business. If it's as a business, you do have to make investments. And, the rule of thumb for, let's say, a demo video or speaker reel, which is 3 minutes long, should be the fee you want to get. So I've spent 5 figures every time when I've developed my speaking reel, because that to me is what's very valuable. So we need to make these investments in the beginning. And if we try to do it on shoestring, can it be done? Yes. But I think the best advice I got very, very early on is somebody said, if you want to look like let's just choose a random number, a $10,000 speaker, you better look like a $10,000 speaker, even if you aren't that right now.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was getting to. I'm so glad to hear you say that, because there's enormous reticence and reluctance to do that on the part of many folks, especially in the early part of their career. Mary, I want to ask you the same question. Up and coming fledgling speaker, I don't know where to begin. I look at your background, I think, my God, she's got so much experience. How am I ever going to be able to master it as well as she has? What's your advice to me?
So it's so interesting, because I had a good career in the military, but you have to remember where I was, we weren't allowed at that time, we weren't allowed to have social media accounts. We weren't allowed to have lists. When I went and did all these talks, I wasn't allowed to capture audience information. And the first 4 books I did are owned by the military. So I started from nothing with 0. And you have to look at what is going to build momentum. So you look at what is your value, what do you know, and who can you help? And then from there, you craft the message and the website, and join your NSA chapter, join your local chapter, show up. I don't care who you are, how experienced you are, you show up at a chapter, you're going to learn something from somebody. And what sometimes we forget in NSA is just because they're a new speaker to NSA does not mean they are new at knowledge or running a business or having connections or all kinds of other things. And this is something I think that it's easy for us to sometimes overlook. But in terms of building a business, find your value proposition, pitch your value proposition to people who will resonate with that. I had a conversation with a speaker very recently who was upset because they said, I'm so tired of trying to prove my value to people who don't value me. I said, why are you approaching those people? Go to the people who love what you do, who like what you represent, and who will hire you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's excellent advice. I think back to my own career, and so much of it is an evolution. You never master this craft. You get better at it, but the day you think you've mastered it is the day that you've gone astray, I think. So you're constantly learning. To your point, there's always more to learn, and that's one of the beautiful things about this, is that you are constantly growing. You have to grow. You can't become stale. I know we've got questions coming out. Terry, I'm going to throw the first one at you. I don't even know what the question is, but Sharon, jump in and tell us what that first question is. Was that fair, Terry? Is that okay? Are you up for this?
It's kind of like, okay, here we go. Whatever it's going to be, it's fun.
Sharon, throw that first question at us. Sharon is on mute and she doesn't know it.
I apologize. I was so busy listening to all of that absolutely fascinating information.
That's okay. I've never done anything like that, Sharon. Never, ever done that. Yeah.
Well, so Terry, my question actually, Mary brought it up just a smidge when she mentioned her first books. Do you need a book to become a speaker? Is that a good jumping off point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, thanks for that, Sharon. So Terry, what about it? Do you need to have a book? I'd like to get everyone's opinion on this one, by the way, because I got my own, but you start us off on this one.
I think today the answer is no, you do not need one. However, it's a really good idea and good to have it. I've written one before. I've written a few books before, and now I'm doing a lot. But I think more than just a book, you do need to let people know you have expertise. I'm doing a lot on my YouTube channel, doing a lot on my podcast. doing a lot in my blog and writing that way. And I think a book is also there. I can think of 2 or 3 books that I want to do and am getting ready to do. So those are there. And so I think the answer is not just a yes or no. It's like, really, it's a no, but you really need to do it. And I would encourage you to definitely look into that and look at how you can take your expertise, congeal it into a form that people can consume, like a book, an audio, a video, or something, and then make that available.
I mean, part of writing the book is not just the street cred that you get from having a book. It's that it forces you, it imposes a discipline, an external discipline, it forces you to think about the topic deeply. And in thinking about
Yes.
it, you're going to come up with new ideas that are worth sharing, one would hope. So the book serves multiple purposes. Steve, what's, and I know you just finished writing a book, Steve. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so I agree with both you and Terry. And look, you don't need a book to be a speaker. I mean, coming back to something Terry said before, we're problem solvers, and you don't need to have that as credibility. I think it's nice. I mean, you can see I have here, I mean, these are all books that I've written over the years. So I think it's nice from a credibility perspective, but what I'll say is that it really does force you to take what could be an abstract concept and make it more concrete. If you want to be a speaker, look, you can get up there and you can do a song and dance and give some content, and people will leave feeling good. But if you want to make an impact, you have to take those concepts and turn them into a process. And that process has to be something that people, not you, but your audience can take and implement. It has to be repeatable. It has to be predictable. And so the great thing about writing a book, even if you never publish it, is it forces you to create a process. If you write a good book, I would say, it forces you to create a process that somebody else could implement. And that gives you scale, because then you can certify people, which is what I do in my process. You can then get other people who can license your content. It opens up a wide range of other opportunities. So if you're going to think beyond being a speaker and really think about it as a business, then the book is, again, just the process of writing the book is very powerful.
Well, so, I mean, one of the fallacies, I love the way that you put that. One of the fallacies about speaking is that it's just speaking. I mean, no one is just, I'm sure there are some, but by and large, people aren't just speakers. You know, we're authors, we're consultants, we're business people. You know, we have experiences that we bring to speaking, and speaking becomes the stage through which we share those experiences. But you're so right, writing the book is an education that gives you some degree of authority and gives your audience something that they can take away, that they can rely on after the speech is done. Mary, what about you on this topic? We were talking about some cool things that you were doing with books before we began the broadcast today.
So I have about 15 books out, and I've got about another dozen workbooks out, because as a former teacher, I like things that people can walk away with. They can reference back to it, they can highlight it, they can use it again later. My speeches have elements of the books in them, but they are not the same thing. People like to have something that they can walk away with as an outcome and use moving forward. And to me, it's all about providing value and products and services. It does not have to be a book. It can be a workbook. It can be a 4-page handout. It can be a mini book. It can be an ebook. It can be a podcast that you give away to people at the end. Whatever it is, people just need how they can get your information as a thought leader in different forms. It's sometimes lost because we love the idea of books, and I do too, because it works for me, but that doesn't work for everybody. We have to communicate in a way that works for them. And some people like books, some people like videos, some people like podcasts. We have to go to them to where they are.
Tom, I have some more questions from the attendees,
absolutely.
if that's all right.
Let's
So
go
this
for it,
question's to Stephen. It's 2026. What does the speaking industry look like? How should we prepare and innovate? And what do we need to shed?
I think one of the things that we're seeing is that people, these are just beliefs that I've seen over the past couple of years, and I think these trends are going to continue. We use the term pivot a lot, but that means changing direction. And I think if you are a speaker who's changing direction all the time with a book on a different topic, or you've got a new concept and you're constantly introducing that, which is, we sometimes think that we need to be novel to be innovative, but that's not true. Innovation is not about newness, it's about value. It's about value creation. And so I think the key thing we need to start thinking about is, how do we create value? How can we create the greatest amount of value for our clients? And so instead of pivoting, which is changing direction and dissipating our energy, one of the things that I tell people to think about, and this is what I've been doing with my business, is to divot. And what I mean by divot is, if you're a bad golfer and you go too deep below the golf ball, you're going to have a chunk of grass that goes flying. Well, that's going deep. And that's what I've been doing. So like over the past year, yes, I published a book on March 3rd, 2020. But then what I did was I created a podcast by the same name. I created an institute by the same name. I created a video book by the same name. We created 2 digital sets of tools with the same content. So we've just been going deeper and deeper and deeper with different ways. Coming back to what Mary was saying, people want to access our content in different ways. But I think it's that depth of value creation that I think is going to become more valuable as time goes on. And there'll be a need for other types of speakers too, but in my world, the work that I do, it is about that depth, that divot, that going as deep as we possibly can to create value that I think is going to matter
so
most.
I love the divot metaphor. That's one that none of us are going to forget now. It's such a great visual to keep in mind. Someone once said to me years ago, talking about speaking, they said, if you're presenting to 1,000 people in an audience, they've invested 1,000 person hours to listen to you. How much time have you invested in your message to them? And it really stuck with me because it's what you're saying. You have to go deep. It's a responsibility that I think you've got to carry as a speaker that you bring to the stage. And if you're not doing that, if you're not investing that time in your own material, then how can you expect an audience to accept it? Sharon, I know the questions are piling up here. I can see them, so I'm going to let you
I
jump
do
right
have a
back
couple.
in.
I apologize. I do have a couple more. And one that is popping up 2 or 3 times is everyone's very impressed with the eye contact, and just how are you constantly just making such great eye contact with us on the Zoom?
Eye contact is what connects us as human beings in any form, virtual or otherwise. And we notice it. It creates trust. It creates, our ability to connect. I think is fundamentally a matter of connecting as human beings through eye contact. So you got to train yourself to look at the damn camera. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing that. You can't be doing this. You have to look at the camera, and you have to do it consistently. And it's a trainable thing. There are devices that you can use. Obviously we're sponsoring the event. Plexicam is a great way to do that. But train yourself to look at the camera. I had a friend in broadcasting that said to me once, make believe that camera is your best friend. And I just kind of stuck with me. It sounds hokey, but guys, what do you think? I mean, for me, that eye contact is so critical in any interaction between 2 people or an audience for that matter. Terry.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you completely. Matter of fact, I'm using my Plexicam right now and I love it. This thing is great because here's the thing you got to remember when you're working with video, you want to connect personally. Because matter of fact, work with me for just a moment here. If I'm talking to you like this right now, and Tom, I'm really talking to you, how are you feeling deep down when I'm looking way over there versus I bring my eyes over where they're supposed to be? Tom, how do you feel differently on that?
Oh, that's what makes the connection real. I mean, you care about me. You care enough about me to look at me, to connect with me. There's empathy in eye contact. I mean, all those things that establish a relationship, I think, are foundationally a matter of us connecting with each other as human beings. And eye contact is the way we do that more often than not.
Yeah, exactly. And if like what I do right now, if I use my laptop, I'm looking up here or I'm looking down here is what happens usually. I'm looking down there at everyone. It doesn't feel as good. With the Plexicam, it gives you a device that is acrylic. I mean, it's really nice. And you put it right there so that it's right there where the people are. So you're looking into the camera, but you can also see all the people. That's the beauty. For a few coins, you get something that just plops on there. And here I am in a hotel room. I can put this here together when I'm in a different environment. I really love the Plexicam.
Well, thank you for that. We love to hear that. Mary, I'm going to ask you a little different version of that question, though. You're in a room with an audience. You got 1,000 people or 2,000 or 500, whatever. How do you maintain eye contact? What do you do? What's the technique that you use to be able to establish that connection with people in a larger audience?
I look directly at different people. I will focus very hard on one person at one time, and I will look at the man with the glasses in the 3rd row and the woman in the back in the purple dress. And you focus on individual people in the audience. Every audience member should feel as though she's talking directly to me, and that's what we want.
Yeah. Stephen, do you have a technique for doing that?
I think it's pretty much the same as Mary's. I will add one quick nuance to it. Is I have a tendency, one of the things, which is going to sound really weird, but one of the things I love about virtual is I tend not to focus too much on the audience. And I really do focus on the camera, just giving my best, because when I look at audiences, I tend to try to read body language. And I've realized I'm not an expert at reading body language. And if I see somebody sitting like this, I think I've lost them. And what ends up normally happening is I'm going to hyper focus on that person. So I've had to train myself to find people who are more actively engaged. And yes, I can see they're really into it. And so I try to do what Mary says, but I'll sometimes overemphasize looking at people who are really into my content, just to make sure I'm not doing my natural tendency of focusing on the people who feel disengaged, even though they necessarily aren't. But that's where my brain goes.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I do the same thing. And maybe it's a fundamental insecurity that we have as speakers, but I see that one person that has their hands crossed or is looking at their phone or whatever the case might be. And I tend to obsess on that individual. And you have to break yourself of that habit as well. Terry, were you going to jump in with? I saw your head nodding there for a minute.
Oh, I agree. I think it's that connection. It really comes back to that. Whatever you can do, you want to connect with others and give them value. That is the real key. And that's how you succeed as a speaker. It's how you succeed in most anything. Find out where the other person is hurting, where they need help, and be able to meet that need. And that means tying your body language into it, making sure you connect virtually, looking at the webcam.
Yeah, you have to care. You have to care. That's what it comes down to. Sharon, I know you got more questions. Let's go back to you.
So I do have a question that came in. They want to know some advice on the LMS on-demand subscription sites or subscription strategies. Do you think that that's important? And I feel like this is a similar question I had from another attendee is, how do you get your name on the speaker bureaus, for example? So I don't know if those are similar. This feels similar to me.
So we got learning management systems, I think is what the LMS might stand for.
I'm sorry.
And,
Okay.
and speakers bureaus. So Mary, you want to take a stab at LMS?
Sure. So a learning management system can be anything. It can be one of the many online course development programs, deliverables, all of that. I think online courses are here to stay as well. I've been teaching online since 1998 on the academic side, so this is not a new thing for me. It makes it a little bit easier, but I think that people want it in smaller chunks, more takeaways, okay, I can log in for 15 minutes and get some value, things like that. And so I think moving forward, my courses are going to be shorter, quick video, a worksheet, a quick takeaway. So that's on that. And then when we get into the bureaus, we can discuss that as a whole nother other thing. But I do think again, it's just LMS is a delivery system for content, and it provides a great outcome. And many people really like it. They can learn at their own pace. Other people don't like it unless somebody makes them do it. So it's a balance.
I've had a course on Udemy for years now, and the one thing that Udemy taught me that I had a tough time with actually originally was they want to chunk up your course into literally 5 to 7 minute pieces. And I had such a difficult time trying to chunk it up that way. But that is the way we consume. And we don't have 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours to sit down and listen to a course, but we can do it in 5 or 7 minute increments. And that has been incredibly effective. Stephen, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I do, because I want to build on what both of you are saying and add a couple of twists to it. And let's not worry about the platform, because I think the platform isn't as important as the design. So one of the courses, I'll call it a course, but it's really more of a competition. Some of the things that I found really get engagement. And unfortunately, because the platforms are so prolific and available and you can cheap, anybody can create a course. So I don't think courses on their own create value, but it's how can we create maybe a cohort-based e-learning program? How can we create a competition? So my most popular course is something which it breaks every rule for design. Basically what it is it's for a cohort of people, especially people who saw me speak. After I leave the stage, everybody gets a text message with a link to a question about something that I talked about in the speech. And then they will get 4 different options, and they get points based on how quickly and how accurately they respond. They get it wrong, they lose points. They get it, they take a lot of time, they lose more points. Once they get the correct answer, it's a 1-minute video, 1 minute only, that pops up that explains why that was the right answer. And then they're brought to a leaderboard where they get to see how they're competing against everyone else. And that goes on for 30 days. And what we found is that we get 95% participation each and every day for some of the busiest executives.
Wow. Because
of the competition, because of the brevity, and because of that whole design. And it's just been a very powerful thing. So think about the design, don't worry about the technology.
That's brilliant. That's such a great takeaway from this session. I've never heard of anyone else doing that. So thank you for turning us on to that fantastic way to continue the engagement. And this has been a theme that you brought to our conversation today. Create engagement with your audience, not just on stage, but beyond the stage. And that's a very different way to think about speaking than I think a lot of people often do. So the bureaus. Okay, we were asked the question about the bureaus. It's a black box to anyone who's not been in the industry for a while. What kind of light can you folks shed on that? How does a new speaker introduce himself or herself to a bureau? What is the best way to get listed with the bureau? Terry, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, first of all, we really appreciate the bureaus. I've worked with them for many, many years and just love the relationships and the partnerships that are there. I think I would say to a new speaker, it's not the way you might think initially. Too often people think, well, I'm just going to send them my recordings, my videos and send that, and then they're going to book me because, hey, after all, I'm so wonderful. I think, at least I think I'm wonderful. And, well, it doesn't matter what you think, Sparky. What matters is what the marketplace says. And what you've got to do is, the old thing is still true, what we've heard so many times. The speakers bureaus do not want you until you don't need them. And so one of the best things you can do is one of my buddies, Tim Matthew, who works with a very good speakers bureau, said, you want to get our attention? Take business from me. In the marketplace, get out there and you get booked. When we wanted one of our speakers to get booked and the client chose you, we will definitely know how to find you and we will know what to do to get in touch with you. So that just means you need to get really, really good. Get better and better in all aspects of speaking, your marketing, your presentation, all of the things we're talking about with learning management systems, that relates to it also. Your books, that relates to it because people are going to hear you and go, oh, I've heard of her. She's really good. Oh, I like that book she wrote. It's really good. Let's see if we can get her. What's her website? Go to the website. It's not just one thing to do. Bring in a multitude of carefully congealed approaches, and then you'll be able to work with the bureaus, and bureaus will look at you as a partner, and that's really what it's all about.
That's a great way to sort of sum it up. You know, there's a great line from a rap song. I can't remember the artist right now. It says, I'm not a businessman, I am a businessman. And I think you're a business. You have to look at yourself as a business and invest in yourself as a business. Build the assets that you need to create that gravitas. Very well said, Terry. Mary, anything that you want to add to that one?
I love my bureau partners. I started out early with a couple bureaus who took a chance on me. My first bureau, I met them at an NSA event. I was walking out the door and they said, hey, I've never seen you before. What do you do? And, I thought it was just like a cocktail thing. And I said, well, this is what I do. And they said, well, give me 30 seconds. I was like, really? Okay, here. And they went, oh, can you give me 60 seconds more? Okay. So you never know who you're going to talk to, and you never know. And that's one thing that I might let people know is you don't know who can hire you and who can't. And I didn't know this person was a bureau. I had no idea. And then they took a chance on me and booked me for an event. And then they told their friends and so on and so on. Here's the thing. Bureaus talk to each other. They always have their ear to the ground. And when they need someone for an event, they will call other bureaus and say, who do you know? Who have you seen? What does that look like? They talk to each other. So your reputation among bureaus is huge. So once you get one bureau, you will get more, but make very, very sure that you protect that relationship with your bureau. And I know some people who don't like working with bureaus because they think that commission is too much. I grew up in a small business family and we lived on commission. So I am more than happy to pay a bureau commission, every single day of the week and twice on Sundays, because they've got clients that maybe I can't get by myself. But I also really like working with my bureaus. They're smart, they work hard, and they know this business inside and out. So I adore them.
And bureaus match talent to the need. I mean, that's part of their role, is to identify, what the client wants and match the talent to it. I couldn't agree with you more. Stephen, do you want to cap this conversation off for us?
I think, what Mary and Terry said is spot on. I mean, relationship bureaus to me have always been a cornerstone of my business. And I value them incredibly. And so obviously I'll say two quick things. One is, if you do get booked with a bureau and you somehow later on get a gig that is because somebody in the audience, make sure you bring it back to the bureau. Those bureau relationships are so important. And the second thing is a technique which I haven't personally tried, but I know some people have tried, is if you want to get the attention of one particular bureau and you can't seem to get your foot in the door, if you book a gig directly, give it to the bureau, give them their commission, work with them. No guarantees that anything's going to come from it, but at least they'll take more notice, because it's not just you sending them a bunch of videos, it's you giving them the opportunity to make some money. So that's the only thing that I really have to add to it, but love your bureaus and treat them with respect.
I think respect, that is the word right there. Treat the relationship with respect and it'll pay dividends to you. And by the way, bureaus aren't these, nameless entities. They're people, they're agents that work at the bureaus that you get to know, that get to know you. It's a very personal relationship at the end of the day, and one that you need to respect like any other important relationship in your life. Sharon, I know we've only got a few minutes left. You want to throw a few more questions at us, at least one or two more?
Sure, absolutely. I was curious what you thought, not me, I apologize. I have a question here from the audience asking, should I deal directly with my clients when negotiating fees? Does that water
Yeah.
down my presentation, my value?
Right. I know personally, a lot of folks have a tough time doing that, negotiating on their own behalf. Steve, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for the longest time, I thought I should be the one to do it, partly because I thought it might diminish my perception in the eyes of the client. Look, if I'm working with the bureau, obviously they're going to do the negotiating for me. But what I've found over time is, because I'm typically not just selling a one and done these days, I'm really trying to make sure that I'm creating a long-term experience, a long-term engagement. It's hard for somebody else to negotiate. So I do pretty much everything now because I want to understand what their needs are. How are we going to create something of greatest value? What could I do that might not cost me anything that I could give them that's going to create more value? To me, that's part of a negotiation. I'm the only one who can do it. So I do all of my negotiating now.
Well, you're focusing on value creation. I mean, I think that's the important part of the negotiation, not the price, but what value are we creating? What are we bringing to the table? And I know in many cases, having those discussions directly with a client, you identify ways to add value that they never would have thought of. And they're grateful for that. They're grateful for the fact that you're able to bring a workshop or a workbook or some process that's more evergreen to the event rather than just the keynote. Mary, what are your thoughts on this?
So I also love it when bureaus negotiate this for me, because then I don't have to, but I totally agree with what Steve said. And that is, sometimes they'll say, hey, we've got this situation, or, I had one situation where they said, we kind of took our entire speaker bureau for the year and spent it on David Horsager. He's amazing. They said, but we also want you. So can you give us a really, really great deal? So you're like, well, what might that look like? And there's all kinds of options. I said, is there any way you can get a copy of the book for everybody in the audience? Can we do this virtually? Can we do this? Like, you find a way to make it work for them. And so to me, it's all about how you best serve your clients. And the fee is just a part of the process. The whole idea is to serve them.
Terry, any final thoughts on this topic?
I just have to put an exclamation mark behind what each of you have said. Be creative and don't look at it, okay, it's only getting paid here. Steve has said this on another matter, but it's not just the money that you get, it's all the other things, and you got to explore. That means ask questions, find out their needs, where they're hurting. They might need this right now, but they also have an even greater need for another thing that's 6 months from now where you could work with them on that. So be open, be creative, and work toward helping them solve their problems.
Love it. All right. So the perennial final question here, which I'll present to all of you. One piece of advice you're going to leave me with as a professional speaker. And that piece of advice is what? Mary, we'll start with you.
Be disciplined, be consistent, and work hard. A lot of what we do is about putting your butt in the chair and getting the work done. And there's just no substitute for the accountability you have with yourself.
So true. So very well said. Terry, your one piece of advice.
I would say one of the things that I admire about the United States Marine Corps, one of the many, they sort of talk about improvise, adapt, and overcome. I think now more than ever, we need to do that. Focus on relationships, on helping them, help others achieve their goals, and be disciplined, as Mary said. Make sure that you're doing that in the right way. Improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Steve, I'll let you close it out for us.
All right. Well, I would say that it's not about you. I think it's so easy for speakers to think that it's about me on the stage, the applause, the standing ovations. It's not. It's not about that at all. It's about the audience. It's about the buyer. It's about their pains, their opportunities, and just making sure that we are hyper-focused on how we can create value for others, knowing that in the process of doing that, we will create value for ourselves. But if we focus on ourselves, we'll never have a very satisfying business.
What a wonderful panel discussion. Thank you each so very much for being here and sharing this time with me. Really appreciate it.
Tom,
Thank you,
thank
Tom.
you for doing a great job
Great.
facilitating all this and inviting us all to be here. It's such a pleasure.
This is
And-
awesome.
Yeah, Tom, you're really good. You ought to look into that speaking thing yourself. I think you got a good future ahead.
I might try it out. Thank you for that. And thank you all for taking the time out of your busy day to join us.